Let's break down economic sanctions. Think of them as the world's version of the silent treatment, except with money and global consequences. Instead of trading or sharing resources, countries say, "We don't like what you're doing, so you can't use our banks or buy our stuff." It's a way to pressure nations without starting a war. A middle ground between a stern letter and military action. Sanctions target countries, groups, or individuals, aiming to force a change in behavior, like halting nuclear programs or improving human rights. Imagine putting a nation in timeout, but the stakes are billions of dollars in international stability. The goal? Hurt the economy just enough to bring leaders to the negotiating table, without causing a humanitarian disaster. In global politics, options are limited. You can't just send a dictator a nasty email and expect results, and war is costly. Sanctions are the ultimate passive-aggressive move. I'm not mad, just disappointed, and freezing your assets. It's a messy, complicated tool, but one with a fascinating history. Sanctions aren't new. They're as old as conflict itself. The ancient Greeks pioneered economic warfare. In 432 BC, Athens banned Megara from its markets, devastating Megara's economy and sparking the Peloponnesian War. So the first big sanction led to a 27-year war, not exactly a success story. Fast forward, during the Napoleonic Wars, Britain and France tried to strangle each other's economies with blockades and embargoes. Napoleon's continental system banned British goods, Britain's navy blockaded France. The fallout hurt everyone, even dragging in the US and fueling the War of 1812. These early sanctions were blunt instruments, sledgehammers, not scalpels. But the core idea remains: use economic pain to achieve political goals. Whether blocking ancient merchants or seizing cargo ships, it's always been about hitting where it hurts, the wallet. Over centuries, these crude tactics evolved into today's more targeted, sophisticated sanctions. The learning curve was steep, but the principle never changed. Sanctions have always been about leverage. After World War I, the League of Nations hoped sanctions could prevent future wars. Their big test came in 1935 when Italy invaded Ethiopia. The League imposed sanctions, banning arms sales and loans, but left out crucial items like oil. Major powers weren't on board, and loopholes let Italy keep trading. Mussolini shrugged off the sanctions, conquered Ethiopia, and exposed the League's weakness. The lesson? Sanctions only work if everyone enforces them. Without unity and commitment, they're just empty gestures. The League's failure showed that good intentions aren't enough. You need real economic muscle. Sanctions require consensus and sacrifice to be effective. Otherwise, they're as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Post-World War II, sanctions became a Cold War staple. The U.S. embargo on Cuba began in 1960, aiming to topple Castro's regime by isolating the island economically. Decades later, the Communist Party still rules Cuba. The embargo hurt ordinary Cubans more than the government and gave leaders a scapegoat. Contrast that with South Africa. In the 1980s, global sanctions targeted apartheid. The UN, US, and Europe banned arms, investments, and even sports. Combined with internal resistance, these sanctions isolated South Africa, crashed its economy, and pressured leaders to change. By the early 1990s, apartheid ended and democracy began. The difference? Broad, coordinated action and internal pressure. Cuba's embargo became a symbol of failure. South Africa's sanctions, a rare success. Sanctions can work, but only with unity and clear goals. Sometimes they isolate a regime. Other times they help change history. The outcome depends on strategy and solidarity. Modern sanctions are more precise than ever. Think financial ninjas, not blunt blockades. Trade sanctions can be broad or targeted, banning everything or just specific goods like weapons or tech. Financial sanctions are the real game changer, freezing assets of governments, companies, or individuals. Imagine a Russian oligarch suddenly locked out of their bank accounts and luxury assets worldwide. These smart sanctions aim to hit decision makers, not ordinary people. The US dollar's dominance gives America huge leverage. Sanctioned banks can be cut off from global finance entirely. It's the ultimate "you can't sit with us" move, isolating targets from the world economy. Sanctions also include travel bans and cultural exclusions. No Olympics, no World Cup. The goal: total isolation, making it too costly for leaders to continue their policies. But precision is key. Broad sanctions risk hurting civilians. Today's sanctions are about pressure, not punishment. They're designed to force tough choices, not just inflict pain. The effectiveness depends on unity, enforcement, and targeting the right people. In the end, sanctions are about making bad behavior too expensive to continue. The track record of sanctions is mixed, some wins, many failures. South Africa is the gold standard. Global pressure and internal resistance ended apartheid. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal is another success. Crippling sanctions brought Iran to the table for a historic agreement, but failures abound. The decades-long embargo on Cuba didn't topple the regime, just hurt ordinary people. Sanctions on Iraq in the 1990s failed to remove Saddam Hussein and caused a humanitarian crisis. The lesson: sanctions are blunt tools with unintended consequences. Even smart sanctions struggle to avoid civilian suffering. Dictators often shield themselves while their people pay the price. Success depends on the target's vulnerability and the world's resolve. Sanctions work best when countries care about their reputation and economy. Against isolated regimes, they often fail. The difference between success and failure: unity, precision, and a willingness to see it through. Sanctions can change history, or just make life harder for the innocent. They're powerful, but far from perfect. In 2025, sanctions are more relevant than ever. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the world's first response was a wave of coordinated sanctions, targeting banks, energy, and oligarchs. The aim: cripple Russia's war machine through economic attrition. The results are still unfolding, but the costs to Russia are undeniable. Sanctions now fire the first shots in global conflicts, often from treasury departments, not armies. But overuse raises tough questions. Is it fair for one country to control global finance? What about civilian suffering? Are we facing sanctions fatigue? Countries like China and Russia are building alternatives to US-led systems, which could reshape the future. Sanctions are messy, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel, but they're often the least bad option. They exist in the gray area between inaction and war. As long as conflict exists, economic sanctions will remain a powerful, if imperfect, tool shaping our world.